Hi! You meet Gooby again. Thanks for clicking this video. It's so nice to meet you. Well, same like yesterday. We gonna do a listening practice today. You can listen to it while do any activity, like eat, just lying down, do laundry, or anything else. Are you ready? Let's do it! Hantavirus. The world recently witnessed a sobering reminder of how unpredictable viruses can be when an outbreak of the Andes hantavirus occurred aboard a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean. According to a disease outbreak news report published by the World Health Organization on May 27, 2026, a cluster of severe respiratory illnesses was identified among passengers and crew members traveling on an expedition vessel. The ship, carrying individuals from dozens of countries, became the center of an intensive international response after several passengers tragically passed away from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a severe and often fatal respiratory condition. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a Health Alert Network advisory in May 2026, confirming that the specific pathogen responsible was the Andes virus, which is native to South America and uniquely capable of spreading through close, prolonged human contact. Events like this naturally spark deep concern across the globe, making us wonder how these hidden threats suddenly emerge from the wilderness to disrupt our lives. To understand how such crises begin, we must step back from the immediate panic and look closely at the precise biological and environmental mechanics of how an outbreak is created. The processes of an outbreak. Every outbreak begins with a specific biological phenomenon known as zoonotic spillover, which represents the exact moment a pathogen successfully jumps from an animal host into a human being. In a comprehensive report titled The Global Virome Project, scientists estimate that there are over 1 million undiscovered viruses currently residing quietly within wildlife populations. Most of these viruses exist naturally inside what researchers call wildlife reservoirs, including rodents, bats, primates, or birds, where they have co-evolved over thousands of years without causing severe harm to their original hosts. A research paper published in the journal Nature, Ecology, and Evolution explains that a virus remains locked inside its wildlife reservoir until human activities bridge the ecological gap. When human populations expand into pristine forests, clear land for agriculture, or engage in unregulated wildlife trade, we alter the natural boundaries that kept these pathogens isolated. When these boundaries collapse, a sequence of barriers must be breached for a spillover to occur, as detailed by epidemiologists in a study from the journal Trends in Microbiology. The virus must first shed from the infected animal through saliva, urine, or feces, survive in the environment long enough to encounter a human, and successfully bypass the human immune system to replicate inside human cells. In the case of the recent cruise ship outbreak, the World Health Organization noted that the initial patient had traveled extensively in rural areas of South America before boarding, where environmental exposure to infected wild rodents likely occurred. Once the virus successfully enters that first human host, often referred to as patient zero, it undergoes a massive evolutionary transition, attempting to adapt its genetic machinery from a wildlife environment to the complex cellular biology of the human body. Once a virus enters the human population, the way it spreads is not identical for every pathogen, because each virus possesses its own unique biological toolkit and transmission strategy. A textbook publication by the American Society for Microbiology, titled Medical Microbiology, explains that viruses have evolved specialized surface proteins that determine exactly how they travel and which cells they can infect. Some pathogens are highly stable in the atmosphere and can remain suspended in microscopic droplets for hours when an infected person talks or coughs. Other viruses are much more fragile and cannot survive air exposure, requiring direct contact with bodily fluids or prolonged proximity in enclosed, poorly ventilated spaces. This fragile nature was specifically highlighted by the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control in their May 2026 threat assessment brief, which explained that the Andes hantavirus on the cruise ship did not spread easily through casual contact, but instead required close, shared living quarters over a long period to move between passengers. The diversity of viral transmission strategies becomes even more evident when comparing respiratory pathogens to other classes of viruses. For instance, according to datasheets provided by the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, vector-borne viruses like dengue, Zika, or malaria parasites cannot move directly from person to person at all, relying instead on the biological bridge of mosquitoes to transport the virus between bloodstreams. Meanwhile, enteric viruses, such as norovirus, utilize the fecal-oral route, spreading rapidly through contaminated food, water, and surfaces, a characteristic thoroughly documented in the Journal of Virology. Each virus is constrained and guided by its own structural layout, meaning that a flu virus will never spread like a blood-borne virus, and a hantavirus will never behave exactly like a common cold, because their survival mechanisms are fundamentally distinct. While the precise method of microscopic transmission varies wildly depending on the shape and traits of the virus, the macro patterns of an outbreak follow a highly consistent blueprint. A textbook on infectious disease modeling from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine explains that the trajectory of any spreading disease is ultimately governed by universal mathematical principles of human interaction, population density, and global connectivity. Epidemiologists use a metric called the basic reproduction number, represented as R0, to measure how many secondary cases a single infected individual will create in a completely susceptible population. If the R0 is greater than 1, the disease will grow exponentially, whereas if public health interventions manage to bring the effective reproduction number below 1, the outbreak will naturally decline and die out. In the World Health Organization update regarding the cruise ship hantavirus, officials calculated that international isolation and quarantine efforts successfully drove the reproduction number down to 0.7, effectively halting the chain of transmission. The consistency of these macro patterns means that no matter how a virus travels biologically, it always exploits the exact same modern human vulnerabilities to turn a localized spillover into a global crisis. Urbanization creates densely packed environments where pathogens can jump rapidly between hosts, while global aviation networks allow an infected individual to travel to the opposite side of the planet within 24 hours, well before their first symptoms even appear. A report by the United Nations Environment Program emphasizes that our interconnected lifestyle provides a highly efficient highway system for any pathogen that manages to cross the species barrier. The biological mechanics under the microscope are entirely unique to each individual pathogen, but the behavioral, social, and economic pathways we provide for them remain the exact same throughout history. By understanding that outbreaks are born at the intersection of environmental disruption and human connectivity, global health organizations can better anticipate where the next threat might emerge, moving from a strategy of reactive panic to one of proactive prevention.